Today we recap the Converge 2024 Tanium User Conference. Welcome back to Tanium Tech Talks. I'm your host, Ashley McGlone, and wow, we just got back from Tanium Converge. Now, it's been a couple weeks, but it takes us a couple weeks to recover. You know, we go right out of that into U.S. Thanksgiving and so forth. So I just now got a chance to sit down with my buddy Doug, who I'm going to introduce here in just a second, and we're going to give you a recap kind of from an insider's view of what we thought were some of the big takeaways at Tanium Converge this year. And here's the thing, folks. There were so many announcements, and it's impossible for us to talk about everything that was announced there. We're going to tell you how you can see what was announced there. But if you're watching this and you're a Tanium person and we didn't talk about your thing, I'm sorry. There's just so much to talk about, but we're going to share some really fascinating things there. So before we get too far down the way here, Doug, why don't you introduce? I can't imagine anybody that doesn't know who you are, but why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, there were a few people that didn't know me there in Orlando, but I think they were like Mickey and Minnie were their names. But anyway, Doug Thompson, I am a director of solutions engineering. I'm out here and down in Austin. I also do the Tanium podcast as one of the voice there. So Ashley may be the face of Tanium, but I get to be the voice of Tanium.
Yes, and we're grateful for those podcasts. And folks, if you haven't checked out the Tanium podcast, just search whatever podcast platform you use, search for Tanium, and go check out some of those episodes. So as we kick this off, just kind of all up, Doug, what was your kind of impression of the whole thing? Like just in a line, like what was your big takeaway?
There's an energy there. This was, usually the conferences you get a buzz, you get some other things, but this energy was like a magnitude greater than the ones we've had in the past. It's hard to pin down exactly what it is. Maybe it's the change in location. I mean, it was a huge location. With that, is my step indicator would let you know. But it was just fantastic environment there to have, and there's so much anticipation too, and we're past COVID, we're past the other thing. So shows shouldn't be that big a deal, but this was a bigger deal than last year. It was just amazing. And I think when you get more people, you get more energy.
Yeah, I've been to every Converge since 2018. I think I came in after the first one or two, and so I've been to a lot of these. And I know you and I were even on the COVID era remote Converges. We've done some of those, but yeah, in person. Obviously, this was the biggest Converge ever, and it continues to grow. But I tell you, the one thing that I just kept feeling was like a rocket on the launch pad with the engines rumbling, getting ready to take off. I mean, and not just as a company, but as an industry, we're on the verge of an inflection point in how we do IT every day in our jobs. I mean, with the advent of AI and Tanium being the perfect real-time data source for that, and the autonomous endpoint management, all of a sudden it just unlocks all these new capabilities. And we saw a lot of those on the stage, either getting delivered or on the roadmap for this year. So if we think about the main stage, was there were so much, three different keynote sessions. Anything particular that like the top thing that stands out to you?
Fact that we were represented by so many women, especially in the security standpoint, I thought that was a great thing when we had the three there in the second. There was a second day, but it was really powerful. I thought to have that, and then the customer stories and all are always great. We did a breakout, which I don't think you have on here. We did a state and local government breakout. So we had public sector customers. We had some of our federal customers and the other things. So getting to hear those stories and what they're doing with our products is amazing. That's what I always like when you see what you enable them to do, some things that are really cool. And I always like that in my career.
Yeah, and so for those of you who are watching this recap, it's possible you didn't get to go there in person. So what I want to share with you right now, the link is in the show notes below. All right, it's converge.tanium.com. You've heard me tell that URL many times on this show, but don't go there right now. We're going to tell you what to look for when you go there. Okay, so
Mhm.
after you watch the recap, then you can go check this out. So what I've got shared on my screen right here is the actual Converge website. When you log in, and this is free, okay? And even if you can just sign up right there for a free account and stream all this stuff for free. Now, here's what they've done. When you look at these on-demand keynotes by segment, click the little down arrow there, and you can see each part of the keynotes broken out. So you don't have to watch the whole hour and a half, let's say. You can just pick exactly which piece you want to watch. And so we've got three different keynote sessions that were each compelling in their own right. So the first off was this segment where Dan opened us up on the first morning. And I tell you, there's a lot to talk about with Dan this year. So, probably the one thing, granted, his message was really important, right? But the one thing people noticed was what, Doug?
The shoes.
The
It's all about the
shoes.
shoes.
Yes, he had those Tanium Chucks, those Converses that just stole the show. But beyond that, his messaging was talking about, I wrote it down here, said the world's largest IT outage. And he opened with this shot right up front.
Hmm.
Didn't say anything, didn't call anybody out by name, but he talked about how we had the world's largest IT outage. The
Hmm.
world went dark. We're bringing back points of light with confidence and resilience when the world goes offline.
Hmm.
And he used this word resilient over and over. He talked about trust and the power of certainty. We've heard that with Tanium a lot, but this resilience calls back to a few years in my past here at Tanium. We used to use that word some again, and he's brought that back. Trust in the light of what our industry experienced. And there were these multiple little references. If you didn't have to be listening that hard to realize what he was talking about, but it was really some strong messaging there from Dan about how the other point I thought was interesting along that lines was, Tanium always, we're a single platform for endpoint management, but nobody wants a single point of failure, right? And that's where he emphasized these strategic partnerships with Microsoft and ServiceNow. So this strategic platform partnership, so you're not hanging on one platform necessarily that's going to, potentially be a single point of failure.
Yeah, and it's the integration of those things that you mentioned. That so, and I'll back up to Dan in a minute. But the ability, I spent 20 years at Microsoft where I came here. You spent a long time over there as well. And seeing what we're doing from a partner's perspective that complements the stack that they have with our real-time visibility and control. I met with some Microsoft people earlier today, and it's very much complementary. It's not an either or, it's an and, definitely an and. And then the workflows that come from ServiceNow are fantastic. And together you make this great meal, if you will. If you have the protein only, the meat only, okay, that's great. If you're a carnivore diet, you may have that, but you need some roughage on occasion, and then you always need dessert that goes in there. But it's just simply it addresses all different facets of the environment. As you mentioned with the outage, when we were at our former employer, they had outage. I mean, that's the fact of life is you're going to have that moment where things go dark. And it's the resilience. How fast can you recover from that? That's key. And our architecture and stuff is key to helping sort of get that back up and running very quickly because of the way it runs. So it's unlike any other architecture that's out there. It's not a cloud only type thing, which is nice, but it's not always determined. What I call it, it doesn't always is not determined when you can do things. And then the old thing where you overrode the plumbing so much, all it takes is one wrong thing plugged in the wall, and the whole thing goes dark. Because that's what we had to do. And so I think his message was definitely timely. It was just stating fact that we need to do better as an industry to be more resilient for the people that use our products. It was very much so to do that. Now, Dan, and this is what strikes me, and I did a LinkedIn post about Dan. we had an event at it was basically we're in Harry Potter world, and we're all in a queue for a line, and there's Dan in the line with the rest of us talking to partners and people that were there. Got us, I took a picture of me smiling and waving. But in other meetings I was at, he would come by and we was talking to the customers. Okay, what is better this time than last time, right? And from our product, he was just so engaged with everybody there to get that point of view from unfiltered voice of the customer and all that. And it just shows there's very few CEOs that I would know in the technology industry that would be down with the people. I mean, if you just looked at a crowd, other than his shoes, you would never really know that he was the CEO of our company.
I don't know when he slept because he was pressing the flesh. I mean, he was really engaged with so many people. And at one point, I even was walking down the hall and he pulled me over and wanted me to meet some people. He said, "Hey, look, these are like young military recruits who are here to learn about cybersecurity and some of the vet programs. You know, there's so much he does with the military and how much he helps. And he's just really engaged, like you
Mhm.
said." Well, I would love to talk more about his messaging. There's so much there, but I want you to go watch it now. Okay, now so
Yeah.
that's one thing you want to watch for is watch particularly for his opening and the keynotes. But if we go back to this picture here from the website, so the keynotes on day two, kind of the way it's set up. Okay, I heard some feedback from somebody who, our audience here on this show are people who are driving the mouse and keyboard in the Tanium console every day. And the first day, okay, is going to be more towards your buyers and managers. That's kind of generally, I mean, there's something for everybody there, but that's generally where that first day is. It sounds a little bit more like marketing, all right? But then when you get on the day two, we get into more of the Matt Quinn, our CTO comes
Mhm.
up and he's going to introduce a parade of product managers and technical product managers who are going to talk about kind of a high level. But then the third keynote is where we really get into the details of what some of those announcements are.
Mhm.
So for this technical audience, you really want to focus on the third keynote block there if you want to see the nitty gritty. But I would watch all of it really.
Yeah.
There's so much goodness in there, and I thought it was really cool. We got one of our own on the stage. This guy from VF Corp. I'm sorry I don't have his name handy real quick, but
Mhm.
he was like one of the first Automate users for Tanium. You've probably watched that episode
Mhm.
already with Stephen Yang, and I was cheering for the Tanium admin being on the
Yeah.
main stage. I thought it was great, and getting to talk directly with Matt Quinn and getting to hear
Yeah.
about what his early take was on Automate. And I want to qualify this. So you have to understand how to take the things that come off the main stage. All right. So last year they talked about AEM, autonomous endpoint management, multi-year vision. We delivered Automate this year. We talked about that previously, and that was kind of vision casting, right? And now we delivered on it. So we delivered, and then we did more vision casting for what's going to come down the road here. And some of it, even just within days of you watching this episode, there's going to be new things coming out here before the end of calendar year 2024. New things with AEM that you're going to start seeing in your cloud instance. So I just wanted to make sure that as you're listening to these things, not everything is live today. All right. There's a lot of vision casting. So Doug, I'm curious from your standpoint in some of that vision casting with autonomous endpoint management, what did you really take away there?
Yeah. It's important from I'm a big picture type guy. And in all my career, I've always tried to keep my eye on the ultimate goal, where we're going. And it's a little bit like sailing. If you've ever been sailing, you pick a point across the lake or across where you're going to go. And unless you have a tailwind, it's not a straight line, and you never have a tailwind. So there's always a little bit of sort of changing it, but you're still keeping, and I think it's important to point, here's the big goal, autonomous endpoint management, and here's the little stops we're taking along the way to deliver on that. And he did. And Matt does a wonderful job of doing that. How we're going to go and what this vision is and what the next step is. And because frankly, if we dumped autonomous endpoint management, say we were ready, we had the product, the customers aren't ready yet because there's some maturity and stuff that needs to go on. There's some baseline stuff that you need to sort of get in line to be able to really leverage the impact that autonomous endpoint management can mean. And really, from a security standpoint, and I don't blame you. I don't want to just dump something in and let it control everything, right? Well, I need to build that trust. I need to build my skills to do that. Automate being the very first thing, sort of. Whether there's some workloads and stuff that are low risk, that are very time consuming, that we can then test this out on, see how it's working. And again, some of the other things we talked about, confidence scores and these other things, again, are coming soon, but they're equally important. Another story about Matt is that I was leaving a lab, and I just said I was talking with some customers, some attendees of the lab, and I saw Matt walking across down the hall, and I said, "See that gentleman down there with the backpack and the black coat?" He always say, "What is the black coat and in that backpack?" I said, "That's our CTO. How many CTOs do you know that are running around with two laptops and a backpack, really getting around to go do things?" And again, that says a lot about Matt. He's a nerd. He's a technologist. Dan told us about that, and it really, as a fellow nerd and stuff, it's exciting. But he keeps it in perspective. Again, this is a journey. Here's the vision of me and the team. But here's some things you need to do today to be able to take advantage of that tomorrow. If you look behind me, I've got some Iron Man posters from races I did. I didn't just show up on race day and start doing this. I had a journey of a lot of training along the way to get to the point where I could complete that. So much the same thing. This is a multi-year journey to get there. And once we get there, there'll be something else to do.
We talked about how this just felt bigger this year. It felt more industry, not just one vendor, but industry. And what really set that tone, I think, was the Gartner talk by Tom Cipolla.
Hmm.
And last year it was Dan Wilson. And we called him out last year during this recap. And I got a message from him on LinkedIn after that. But I'm calling out Dan, and then Tom, his coworker, who did the presentation this year from Gartner on autonomous endpoint management (AEM), and it's worth. I ran into them. They grabbed me at the party that night after his presentation, and we had a really good talk. And you think, okay, Gartner, that sounds like these must be really big stuffy people, but these guys were just super down to earth. They've been in the industry for years, and they're like kids, like we are, like just amazed at where the industry is going and how the opportunity with AI and data and this marriage of that Tanium data with AI to create autonomous endpoint management. I want you to go watch I think it's the second keynote session with Tom, but I just want to recap. This is the message, okay? This is why we're so excited, because so many of us have done this every day. And we think about it. Have you ever been maybe you're a security person and you've been in a war room for a 0-day vulnerability, and you're thinking, surely somebody else in the world is working. Every company in the world right now is trying to solve the same problem right now. What if we could share that information in real time? I mean, that's kind of where we're headed with AEM. Same with patching, right? Autonomous endpoint management. That's the vision. And I wanted to call out these two slides and the work that Dan and Tom have done on this, because it really tells the story. And so now what we're seeing is a new Gartner category where Tanium is leading, obviously, to make this happen. And so I just want to share that here to emphasize to our audience, this is real, and it's not just a wish and a prayer, right? This is real technology, and this is our roadmap now, that what you're going to watch unfold, because this sets the tone. And the rest of that keynote 2 and 3 is you're going to see the announcements about the things that are going to make this happen.
Yeah, and it's again, should give you some confidence, and there's just not simply Hal's not running wild and taking over the spaceship, right? So you've got some control that's built in here. It's very reasonable, and a lot of different safety valves in here, which you can sort of, again, you start slowly, you sort of go do those things. But it also is important to remember that the visibility and stuff that you get, the background stuff that Tanium's uniquely to provide. I was talking about performance earlier today, about application crashes and memory and stuff. It's hard to get a feeling for that in a real time environment. Again, doing this, sometimes you can get tools that tell, hey, look, last week you had some problems. Well, I want to know today. I just patched today. How are things doing, right? I want sort of this real time lens of doing it. It's sort of like a self-driving car. I don't want data from yesterday. I want data from today. on the street that it's going on. So we can help provide that because of the architecture and stuff. And so that makes it, I mean, but you're right. The way this is, the nuance change he made in this, what was, is really sort of spot on. And the way that we're progressing that way is really pretty cool. Like you talk about Guardian, I talk about that a lot of, taking what we know from all of our customers and cloud, the telemetry we're getting, and then being able to, Guardian, hey, you're at risk for this, but then the confidence score, hey, of all of our customers worldwide, I was doing it today. There was an update to like 7-zip or something, which had a very high score in it, which mean it was good. It mean high success rate. Then they had a new Chrome browser, which was low, and it was because nobody installed it yet. We didn't have any detail on it. So I got low confidence on that. Maybe I don't want to deploy this browser right away. But as it goes, again, because we have the real-time access to that, we can change that score on the fly. You're not having to wait, okay, but it's score update Wednesday. Maybe I'll get an update on Wednesday.
Well, I think it sounds like what you're alluding to is there that deploy software gallery
Mhm.
score. Is that it?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So again, watch the keynote announcements, but now that deploy software gallery
Right.
is going to have a confidence score of a success rate
Mhm.
for that particular version of the app, which I mean that's huge intel. I mean,
Yeah.
you're pushing out an update to an application, and in all of IT history, we know some application updates go well and some don't. Now you've got a little indicator, is this going to be successful or not?
Right.
So we're
It's a
just
cure
we're
worse
getting
than
those
the
pieces in there.
disease, right? We want to avoid those things. But you're right, it ties into this. This is all part of it, right? So it is going on. It's just the little lens there. This is an easy not an easy thing, but it's a contained metric of which we can measure. That we know that then you can scale that out. Well, how do we do that from a patch, or how do we do that from a script? How do you expand from there? Once you've proven the baseline here of we can do this with deployments, third-party application deployments, then how do we sort of do these other levers?
Yeah, there were a couple things. I say this every year. They've gotten better internally here at Tanium of letting us know what some of the announcements are going to be, but there were still some things I saw for the first time on the main stage.
Hmm.
So some of the things like, guide, ask, we've already did the
Hmm.
episode with ask with the question
Yeah.
bar, right? Some other things that we kind of knew about, but jump gate,
Hmm.
my customer, I had a customer, there's a manufacturing customer, like this is exactly what we need for supplier access inside our network. Cause we've got, think about that where you've got, I guess it's ongoing persistent system access
Hmm.
because people need to get in remotely to do things. And that's always open,
Yeah.
just waiting for them to show up. When it's more secure, if that's on demand access is granted,
Hmm.
and you don't have to leave the VPN open all the time. And so this was something really cool because it was like internal Tanium. We had developed this for our own purposes and then decided to turn it into a product because we'd had the demand from customers with measured access into systems so that it's not persistent always
Hmm.
on access. It's just amazing. And I could see huge applications for that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Sometimes these secrets do actually get through. So I was surprised a couple times as well.
Yeah, and the Hunt IQ that
Mhm.
Melissa Bishoping talked about with her team and the security folks, people have asked us for years, can you help us with our incident? And we've
Hmm.
always told them no. But we've had, enterprise services engineers now for several years, and now we're going to extend that into help using Tanium during, any type of security consulting type, and I want to be really careful. I know I'll misspeak on some of these things because I don't have all the talk track down, but you've got to go watch some of these announcements
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
And if you haven't met Melissa, is just she's one of the smartest people I think I've ever met, especially around security. But she's very humble in the way that it comes across. But she's also, when you hear her speak, again, she's one of the good speakers that we have, and her vision that goes on. And when I talked to her later, I said, well, congratulations on it. So this is something I've always wanted to do. Right. And now I get to go ahead and get support and go do this. And I just think, and let's go change the world.
Oh yeah. So Melissa, you mentioned the ladies. There was this ladies segment. It was just
Yep.
the ladies of security. It was Melissa and Shelly and Harmon and Stephanie.
Hmm.
I don't think I missed anyone. And it was just this amazing moment to see these women leading. And I think that was the same day as like the women in tech breakfast. You know, it was just
Yeah, it was. It was
wonderful to
later that
see.
day. And you know, I see
Yeah.
this, I follow some cybersecurity and it's really great to get their perspective of this and show that show my I've got daughters, I got granddaughters, and it's like show them that it is possible. You know, this is not a men only area, and we've got people to prove it. And it's just they're awesome. I mean, Melissa
Yeah.
scares me sometimes. She knows so much, so I turn everything
She
off when I'm
she
around her.
knows her stuff. She really does. Yeah. Wow. We have to mention endpoint expansion.
Hmm.
This is Tanium without an agent, basically. Like everything from mainframes to OT, like manufacturing systems, industrial controls type stuff, to bringing in data from Intune. They announced this basically, again, visionary
Hmm.
coming on our roadmap is going to be the ability to get data from things that don't have a Tanium agent installed, and it would look like a first party citizen in Tanium where you could query it and get status of it. Now, obviously, you're not going to be able to do every module use case on devices like that, but it's a new version of a satellite which allows you to reach into some places you couldn't before to get that, tier one. I need visibility of what's in my environment before I can even begin to think about controlling it. And there were some use cases even around comply and patch and things that they're hinting at
Hmm.
with some of this endpoint expansion. Is just gonna really, I mean, I remember the first time I saw an internal demo, and it just blew my mind. Like, oh
Yeah.
wow, this is what we've customers have been asking for this for years.
Having that real time, having that high fidelity data that comes from the endpoints themselves, not abstracted through Active Directory or something, some other third party thing. Having that at first in put it into asset and then being able to share it with like ServiceNow, say we talked about platforms before, sending stuff into Microsoft and Sentinel and all, where you get that real time information. Again, your security tools are only as good as the information that they have access to and the actions that they can take. And this is where we really come in and we can help make, again, a Microsoft solution look better, whatever, is we can give you that real time state of what's going on. And then, hey, I need to dig a little bit more about it. And then do things at scale, right? There are some things where I could go in and do things on a one off basis on a single endpoint. But if I've got fire breaking out, I've got malware spreading, I need to do things broader than one at a time because there's not, even automated, there's not enough of me to go around. How do I do that stuff at scale where I go in and I usually show like the print nightmare thing? Well, how do I find everybody's got print spooler and within a minute and a half, I've not only found everybody's got print spooler, but I can also then stop the service and keep stopping it until something goes on. Think about who's got malware.exe. Hey, keep killing that process until I can get control of what's going on.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so it's suddenly realizing I'm dawning on me that we've got two talkers on here, and we've both been going on, and it's exciting. It really is, and
Yeah.
it's fun to just we could talk about this stuff all day long.
Oh yeah. Talk about
Um,
the labs, talk about all the other stuff. I mean, I got a vibe from the
yeah,
labs that was just not, I've taught labs for 3 years, and the vibe that I got out of the lab this time I was teaching the zero trust one was outstanding. I mean, people just complimenting that it was great. And seeing them you talked about some of the military. We had a couple Air Force people that were in there, a couple women. They were in fatigues the first day, and they were looking at zero nine. I said, "I know you're good customers." I said, "Well, we never get to play with this. We're down lower on this. So we actually like to see what was going on." So they got to do some things they didn't have the rights to do in production. But it's just you build fans that way, and this thing, so many fans I think were made at the conference.
oh yeah, tons of lab deliveries that went off pretty well. There, I think that at one point the hotel internet had a
Yeah,
blip in the first morning, but other than that, the
yeah,
labs went off pretty well. And there's so much prep and so many people that are on that team to make the labs
yeah.
happen. There was, I think, 5 different labs on Automate. We had
Hmm.
the ServiceNow and Microsoft partnership labs, and so many other topics that are hot for our customers. And I tell you, also, what was amazing to me was I spent some time in the certification area,
Hmm.
and I can't announce any numbers, but our certification numbers were way over last year. We had a
Yep.
much larger exam center there,
Hmm.
and a lot of people passing their exams, more taking exams and having success this year. I had so many people walk up to me and say, "Hey, thank you for the TCO and the TCA
Hmm.
videos. They helped me, and I passed today." And Mason Dillon was there, who's
Yeah,
done a lot of those videos, and he said, five different people came up and asked for a selfie picture with him. It was just a lot of fun to see the
it is.
energy around certification and exams. And so I know some of you are used to watching the Tanium Tech Talks playlist here on YouTube. I've got 20 videos out there. In addition, go to converge.tanium.com, watch the breakouts, watch the
Hmm.
keynotes, then come back here to this playlist, and you'll get to meet some of the people who were certified, and get to meet some of the people that did the capture the flag, the CTF. Get to hear from some people in the labs. Also, there's a special interview there with Jasper Liao, who runs our community, talking about Tanium Titans. Doug, I know you mentioned that one. What did
Hmm.
you find interesting with Tanium Titans?
It's so good to see them recognized. Back at their other company had MVPs and stuff like that, but to really these people that keep contributing to the community. That's the another thing. If some people would call it a cult or something, but it's a good cult in a good way. In that so many people just love what they're doing and what they can do. Again, I look at Tanium as something that shows off what's possible, gives you the tools necessary to show up and do some really cool things that you couldn't do before, and then recognizing that fact of those people that give back because they don't have to, but they do because they like it and it helps build them. So recognize them as the Titans thing, and then getting some cool sneakers and stuff like that as well to sort of recognize that in the jacket and all. I just think that's fantastic, and I look forward to next year getting a lot more Titans on board.
Check out the video in the playlist here on YouTube for Tanium Tech Talks. Go find the one with Jasper talking about Tanium Titans. And so basically, you go into the Tanium community from help.tanium.com, find the link for the community. Now, when you answer questions, ask questions, your certifications, you get little badges in there and gamification and awards there, recognition for our people who answer questions all day long who are not Tanium employees, customers that are and partners who are really passionate. And partners, we haven't even got a chance to talk. I know we're running long. We got, I mean, partners. We had Microsoft, ServiceNow, and then all
Hmm.
the delivery partners. And I'm afraid if I start mentioning names, I'm going to leave some out. But there's a few partner videos in this channel here as well. And thank you to our partners who were sponsors of the
Hmm.
event this year. And finally, I mean, the parties. You're in Orlando. We got to go to Universal. You got
Hmm.
to go to Disney. I mean, these are amazing event parties,
Yeah.
and like you said, you ran into Dan at Harry Potter World, and it's just great to go hang out with folks. The butter beer. So I'm not really a big Harry Potter fan, okay, but and I had no idea what butter beer was. It's not beer, but it's like
No.
butterscotch stuff. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, wow!
That is the
So
best. Don't drink it anywhere else because it'll pale in comparison to that. Because I've had some from some regional things. I'm like, whoa, this it's just way too
oh,
sweet. If the frozen butter beer is yeah, that's good. I like that.
right. So that's your excuse to come back to Converge next year is
Exactly.
for the butterbeer at Harry Potter World.
There you go. Yeah, hopefully
Yeah.
we do that. The rides were cool. I got to ride a couple things without a line that you got to go into, but the food and everything was great. And just talking to the people that are there, spending time out. It was an open air thing where we had dinner, but you got to talk to a lot of people. And that was the thing I like. As Ashley mentioned, we're both talkers, and getting to sort of talk to other people and find out what their story is. I'm a storyteller, so I love to hear that. And seeing Amy Farrah Fowler, well, you didn't mention that, but she's did the keynote on this. That's her stage name. Miriam is her given name. She said one thing to me that is a storyteller really connected. And when we talk about technology, sometimes we talk to people that don't understand it. They don't get it. And you probably got managers and stuff that, hey, we need Tanium to go do this, but they can't really explain what it is. She, because she's trained scientist, she didn't really want to do acting. She tells a great story about that. She sort of, I did this thing, but insurance is running out. I need to do something else. So the whole thing about Big Bang Theory, and she looked at it from not her actress lens, but from the lens of a scientist. how would you do things? And that made her character very real. She was really is a great storyteller. Her science background was fantastic, and I thought,
Yeah, I loved her opening line. So number one, first off, I want to say all the there's that outsider that you invite as like a big main stage
mhm,
speaker every year, and they never give you permission to host their content because it's all that's how they make their money is going and giving that speech, right?
mhm.
But my and I'm sorry, I can't, I know I'll butcher her name if I try to pronounce her name, but
I just
she
call her
she
Amy Fairfellow. That's what I
yeah,
know her as,
she
or Blossom.
it's available there to stream. She didn't. She gave us permission to put it there, so you can
Yeah,
go catch her keynote interview with Jake here from Tanium. It was amazing. She's so down to earth, but she walked on, her first word was remediation.
yeah,
And it's like, what? What's she talking? She said, I thought I'd use that word because everybody else is using it.
yeah,
But she just really connected so well. So go
yeah.
check it out. Converge.tanium.com. Go stream all that. Check out the other 20 videos here of just behind the scenes, word on the street, talking to people at Converge and get a flavor for it. And so join us again November 17th through the 20th in 2025, again at that same venue. It's a beautiful location at the Marriott World Center there in Orlando. So, Doug, thank you for joining us
Mhm.
here again for the recap this year on Tanium Tech Talks. And I hope I'll see you before then, but if not, I know I'll see you again in Orlando next year.
Exactly. And thanks for having me again. Two talkers getting on is always dangerous, but it's always a great conversation. Again, as I mentioned, I love talking to people, getting perspectives and highlighting things that I didn't know about. So look forward to see all of you in Orlando. Come hunt us down. I know Ashley's got some good swag of, are you past the 8-bit pictures now that you're giving out now? Are you up to 16 or 32
Yeah,
bit?
yeah. So last year was the 8-bit stickers. This year's the 16-bit stickers, the limited
Okay.
edition Converge stickers. So I was passing those out. Those are pretty hot this year as well.
I
So
think I've got to come up with a voice of Tanium sticker, which won't include my face. So we'll work on that.
yeah, yeah. Well, thank you all for putting up with these two Tanium talkers. And I know, again, there's so much we didn't get to. Go to converge.tanium.com, stream that content. And even if it takes you a week of lunch hours, I promise
Mhm.
you it's worth it. Some fantastic content, plus the breakouts. And so we hope to see you next year, November in Orlando. And until then, go Tanium.